And at some point while I was there, she made the comment that after 3 years of studying German, she thought my German had actually gotten worse. All right, everyone, hello, welcome. My name's Bettina, and I am a language tutoring coach. So I have been teaching English as a foreign language or as a second language since 2009, and I have been doing so online since 2014. I have taught students in every age range from around the world, and it has been absolutely wonderful. Since I have gained some insights into language learning and some commonalities between students all across the globe, I thought it would be a good career move to start sharing some insights with you, and I am hoping that it will be helpful to anyone wanting to learn. When I was in about my mid-20s, I would say, I made a trip to Austria to visit my grandmother, and I was all excited to try and speak in German because my speaking skills had been very bad my entire life, still are, and I had finally had the opportunity in university to study German. I thought, this is my chance. I can finally become fluent, and I will go and I will talk to Oma and Opa, and it'll be great. Well, I got to my grandparents, and I chatted with my grandmother, and over the span of the time I was there, and at some point while I was there, she made the comment that after 3 years of studying German, she thought my German had actually gotten worse. So that was not really a great moment for my language learning journey. And I want to talk about that today because I feel as though I have had a similar experience since teaching English, and I will get into what I mean by that. But the reason that my grandmother thought my German was worse, and it was because we get into this phase of when we learn, and this was traditional learning in a classroom setting, vocabulary, grammar, drills, all of that. The emphasis is on usually the grammar and proper structure. Nothing wrong with that. However, there is a tendency for the student to then become over-concerned with the grammar, and that was me. I was so afraid of making a mistake that I could barely say anything anymore. I had a much easier time before that now I still did not like making mistakes before that, but I didn't know about my mistakes, and so it made it easier to try and speak. So that's what happened when I finally had the opportunity to learn German officially in university. Since then, I realized that my teaching has had a little bit of a similar arc to it. Initially, in my early years of teaching English, I began to notice patterns in the errors that my students were making. And I found this very interesting because you will find similar patterns with students or people who speak the same language. So all of my German-speaking students, they made the same errors. All of my Spanish-speaking students, they made the same errors. So I thought, wow, this is pretty interesting. And from that, I also began to notice that if I ever want to learn one of these languages, if I pay attention to these mistakes that my students are making, it will actually help me be a better learner. For example, I mentioned that I speak German. Well, all of my German language students, native German students, make similar errors. For the big one is always using the perfect tense. So I have been or I have done, that configuration. And because I already know some German, I know this is because In spoken German, this construction is much more often used than the simple past. I went, I did. So if I, as the language learner, am trying to improve my German, then I would have to remember, when I want to use the simple past, I should probably use this perfect tense, because that's going to be more natural sounding in this other language. I've noticed my Slavic language learners, they almost never use articles. The, an, a always gets left out. So I will probably find, if I ever want to learn one of those languages, I will probably see that there either are no articles or they are rarely used. The same goes for Asian languages. Most of my Asian language mother tongue students will always default to the present tense. They have a very difficult time working with other tenses like past and future. And so, of course, I found out that this is not really a thing in the Asian languages. You have the present tense and then you have markers and context to tell you if something happened at a different point in time. So if I learn that language, then it's beneficial to me to pay attention to the errors that those students make, because it will help me be a better student in their language. By the by, in case you want to take advantage of all of these things that I have learned over the years as a language teacher, please do let me know. I have all of my information in the description. I do offer language coaching, language accountability, and some tutoring as well. So all of those links you will find. And also please remember to like the videos if you find them helpful, and remember to subscribe, because I will be sharing bits and bobs from my teaching journey all throughout these videos, as well as my own experience as a language learner myself. So if that's of interest to you, please remember to subscribe. So even though my experience as a language teacher has had some definite aha moments, and I do believe what I have seen in my students can help me greatly as a student myself, I have begun to notice that I am going into, or I have been going into, this kind of downward spiral in my language learning also related to what I've learned as a teacher. So because I have seen the most common errors that my students have made, and mind you, remember, this is hundreds of students across thousands of class time hours, right, over the years, I have realized that I am very likely to not be a good student. Now, I have always been a good student in the traditional school setting. However, language learning is a little bit of a different animal, if you will. And there is a lot of self-accountability involved in language learning. You get to a point where you really have to put your own effort into it. You can only get so far through traditional methods and memorization, and it all works, it's all wonderful, but when you get to a certain point, it becomes exponentially harder to continue to improve. This is what we typically call the intermediate plateau. I will be going into more detail on why this is, but I realized that it's going to be a lot of effort on my part to do what I need to do to continue to improve in my language or languages of choice. I have a big problem with fear of failure. And because of that, I will very often opt to not try instead of feeling like I failed. So this is a psychological issue that I have, right, with language learning. I will also, because of these things, I will also avoid setting a learning plan, because although I do an excellent job of setting plans and setting goals, the actual execution of those plans requires me to put in active effort on my part, and because I know that I'm bad at that, I will avoid putting together any sort of a plan, again, to avoid failing at it. So I have had, over time, these compounding issues of all of this fear of failure, because I know my own personality with these things. When I am accountable to myself, I typically will not do so well. As you already know, if you saw my previous videos on, or at least the previous video on setting language learning goals, I am attempting this year to set a little bit more formal, informal goals for my language learning, and to try to keep myself accountable to that, in part by creating these videos. What do I want to do this year? I'm going to make a more dedicated effort to work on the languages that I know and the languages that I have dabbled in. I am going to do so through following my own guidelines. So if you look at any of the information in the description, follow any of the links there, it will be what I have learned and what I have been using for years with my students, what I believe is the most effective. And I understand that it's one thing to say, I believe this is most effective, but it's another thing to say, I believe this and I have tested it out myself. So, since I am new to all of you on YouTube, I will be putting myself officially through all of my own guidelines so that you can see what my progress is and you can follow along with me, because I am a language learner too. I struggle along with you, and it is the goal of all of us, I think, to improve our languages. So I want to do that together, and I am hoping that you will follow along the journey with me and that we can find the best way to help each other in that. And I think that's all for today. I think that's all I wanted to say. So thank you very much for joining me today. And I will be back in roughly a week with some more bits and bobs, tidbits, and insights as to language learning and the most effective way to improve in our languages. Thanks very much.